My name is Mary Richter, and I'm the Content Marketing Lead here at UPMO, and I'll be your moderator today, stepping in for our producer, Crystal, who's off today. If this is your first time joining us for the show, here's a quick introduction. The Social Talent Show is a thought leadership series developed by UPMO and Talent Culture, designed to showcase radical thinkers on the topics of talent collaboration, talent mobility, HR, and social talent. We host the Social Talent Show one Wednesday a month at this time, 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern, and we feature a new thought leader in each episode. For a lineup of our upcoming shows, just visit socialtalentshow.com and you'll see everything that's coming up. We'll introduce today's guest in a minute, but first I'd like to introduce our two stellar hosts. First we have Rob Garcia, who's VP of Product at UPMO. Rob is a disruptor and innovator from Silicon Valley who has been building e-commerce, financial, and consumer-oriented web and social products for over 12 years now. He's also a leading voice in the startup community, blogging, tweeting, mentoring, and speaking passionately about disruptive innovation, and more recently about social collaboration, career, and talent management. Rob, say hi.
Thank you, Mary. Hey, it's good to be here again. We should be doing this more often, Megan. I'm excited about the topic today. So, yeah, glad to be here.
And next we have Megan M. Vero, founder of Talent Culture and T-Chat, which is a very popular Twitter conversation about talent culture, the future of work, and the intersection of social media, recruiting, and HR. Megan's a member of the National Association of Personnel Services, the Society for Human Resources Management, and several entrepreneurial organizations. Her thoughts are often quoted by Forbes, CBS Money Watch, Glassdoor, Monster, and just about every other leading HR publication that you'd ever read. Megan, say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. Happy Wednesday, and I'm delighted to be part of this show today. And yes, T-Chat World of Work happens every Wednesday. And I recently joined forces with Brent Skinner on HR Tech Chat, which happens on Friday afternoons. So be on the lookout for a new hashtag. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Well, a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. All the participants are muted throughout the duration of the show, but we're taking your questions through the chat feature and also on Twitter. So please be sure to use, yes, more hashtags, T-Chat or Social T-Show, and we'll do our best to get your questions answered during the show. We're recording this webinar, and all the slides, video, and podcasts will be available for you probably sometime tomorrow up at socialtalentshow.com. So feel free to come back and take another look at anything you might have missed. And also, we'd love it if you tweet it out and get the word out to all of your followers. So without further ado, here are your hosts. Take it away, Rob Garcia and Megan M. Vero.
Thanks, Mary. So today's topic is pretty exciting to me, and because for a couple of reasons. One, it kind of took me by surprise. That I think, you know, the same way that cloud took a lot of people by surprise. Suddenly, all the analysts, it's almost like they had a meeting and they all decided to get together and talk about, you know, big data being the next new trend. So I've been on a quest since the last HR Tech to try to figure out and understand really what it means, and to actually look for cases and where people have actually used it effectively. And I haven't found any big, you know, successful ones. So there's some lights of ray here or there, but nothing really big. So I stumbled upon Greta a couple of times, met what she was up to with her company, so decided to explore the topic a little bit more. And Greta has tons of ideas and tons of knowledge she's going to dump on us in the next few minutes. So I'm excited to have her. So a little bit about her. So she has tons of experience in this area. Obviously, she's been working on this for the last few years. Comes from Netscape, Communications, IBM, Lotus, and Cisco Systems. So lots of big company expertise there. And she has been launching innovative software technologies into uncharted, skeptical markets, including this one. And she has used numbers to include people in business optimization efforts. And that's really an interesting background that she has, that she brings to the table. Her newest baby is talent analytics. It's a product that she kind of envisioned, put together, and she's been driving and getting to the market, and she has more than 400 organizations using it effectively. So a couple more things about her. So if we look at Greta from a talent analytics perspective, and more from a market, employment analytics, and this is the way HR typically have reports about people. You know, she's 67 inches tall. She's 52 years old. She has an IQ, and some of these systems actually have the IQ of this person. Her phone number, she probably has a salary, a driver's license, a weight that I'm not sure she wants to share. Nobody does, right? Nowadays, even I am aware of that.
I can lie.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
A set of talent analytics numbers. So if I were to introduce you, Greta, with all these numbers, wouldn't this be a joke?
It would definitely be a joke, and the point of this, and thank you, by the way, Rob and Megan, and for the attendees, it would be a joke in that you'd learn a lot of things around me, or you would learn metadata about me, and all of these things are really interesting things. They actually do describe me. The other thing that, you know, we have as the bottom line there is that I'm also a person, and just because there's a set of numbers there, like an IQ that's associated with me, it doesn't take away from my personness. And so I think sometimes when they hear about talent analytics and they hear about us talking about, like one of our favorite saying is, you say I'm a number like it's a bad thing. And of course we do that to, you know, fly in the face of people that go, you can't say I'm a number, but we're saying you're also a number. You're not only a number. So part of this is to say, you know, no, it's not a joke. We really do live in a, you know, in a world where numbers talk. And so talent analytics, obviously the analytics part, is that there are numbers that help to describe characteristics about you that are really useful in business, but it doesn't take away your personness.
Yeah,
I'm so glad to hear that, Greta. You have no idea. This is Megan, and I mean, I've been saying for most of my career that people hire people. They don't hire resumes. They don't hire data, although big data is, I think, entirely a recruiter's best friend if we can really come to an understanding of what it is and sort of moving beyond the buzzword of big data and even talent analytics to a certain degree and get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of how this can help the everyday HR and recruiting practitioner understand how this information technology-driven term relates to the here and now. You know, and then even beyond that, how social media is helping impact, you know, this whole visual data visualization piece, because we all are people at the core.
Right.
You know, so I think it's important you bring that up.
Great. Great. You bring up a great question, or a great point, just in terms of data visualization and big data and things like that. And Rob, I don't know, do you want to go through the agenda, or do you want me to? Just to talk, because we will get into some of those definitions that might be helpful.
Let's jump right in. I think that's a good teaser of you know, what's really data and what's really talent analytics and what is it used for. So that's what we're going to cover today. I don't have to read every single bullet point here. That's primarily what I love this conversation to be about. Is big data really necessary? Has it given us any value so far? It's the effort that we put into really creating all these big data systems. Have they pan out? And I want to hear from you, Greta, a little bit about how, you know, what are all these terms, big data versus talent analytics versus, you know, workplace analytics or workforce analytics. I mean, let's jump right into that. Why don't we just start with that?
Okay. So let's start out, thanks Rob and Megan again, let's talk about what talent analytics is not. And so there's a lot of systems out there, and it might be that you're doing it in a homegrown system or even on paper or using talent management software or a combination or multiple systems or learning management systems or whatever. And a lot of things that are tracked today would be things like hire date or home address or your competencies or skills or titles or who you report to or your past positions or benefits or, you know, what groups you're members of, or, you know, et cetera. And you can sort of read the rest of the things here. Cost for hire is, you know, one in the recruiting space, or how long it took to hire. All of that stuff tends to be tracked, and there's a long history, maybe 10 or 15 years, where systems, typically talent management software, has been tracking that kind of information, and it's absolutely necessary in order to track that. What happens then, though, is that there's been such a, you know, focus, and people spend so much time tracking that information, and you now are sitting on all of this data, people say there has to be a way that we can use this data to, help us make decisions going forward. But really the best that you can do with this is to run very sophisticated reports, and it's extremely useful. But, and if we advance to the next screen, what we're talking about here is workforce analytics. We're looking at the workforce. Can you back up one screen? Thank you. What we're doing is we're really looking at metadata about the people. You see nothing about Greta in here. You can tell what groups I'm a member of. You can tell who my past manager is. You can tell what my hire date is. And what we really are asking people to do when we say, take a look at all of the workforce analytics that you've somewhat manually been developing and entering into your systems and things like that, and see if you can now try to get a sense of Greta herself and how she's going to be a fit in the role. And so what really is happening with workforce analytics that we see is that you're gathering all of this and then trying to infer who the person is, versus saying, hey, let's measure the person or the people or the teams of people themselves, and then try to infer things about them kind of outside of them. And so workforce analytics, by definition, is all of the information or inclusive of the information that we see on this screen.
Okay, that's great. So thanks for making that distinction between, it seems like a lot of the data and a lot of the things that you have here in the background are things that are being captured by HR core systems today. Competencies, title, positions, benefits, my 401k, my address, my phone number, my my emergency contact person, all the stuff that really doesn't add up to even describe how I am, how I work, how excited and passionate I am about the topics that I deal with day to day, how crazy I am about launching innovative products. None of that stuff isn't there. So is that what workforce analytics?
So yes, workforce analytics talks about, again, we sort of coined the phrase talent metadata. So metadata is, if you think about, sometimes we think about, if you go and you look at a file on your computer and you say, oh, I can tell it's a Word doc, and then it's 1.2 megabytes, and that it, has certain other, it's video, or that it has these other characteristics, but it has no idea, it can't tell you anything at all about the content. And I think that's a good metaphor for workforce analytics. It tracks very interesting and very important things, but it's only talking, it's a wrapper. It's really a wrapper around the people themselves. And so the big innovation, I think, for talent analytics is to say the wrapper is important, it's extremely important, but one thing you don't have in here is a picture of a person, and the people themselves and what they like and what they care about and that sort of thing. And one thing I just wanted to make clear as well is that we have been around for almost 12 years at this point, so it's not like we're just a startup that started yesterday. We've been doing this for actually quite a long time. I just wanted to make sure that the audience understood that. So yeah, workforce analytics, kind of a wrapper, very interesting, very necessary, very good for reporting. You have to report to the government and taxes and all that sort of thing, but it doesn't really tell you anything about your single greatest asset in your organization, which is the people themselves.
And one of the
which in turn means
Yep.
capturing more of that data, which is what I think the concept of big data is, right? Having more of that and trying to infer from it, it's not really helping us really understand the talent that we have. Is that correct?
It's a great point, yeah. So gathering more wrapper data. Again, think of the file. If I just say, oh, come on, give me more granularity. Oh, well, we could say it was created on the 4th. The last time it was accessed was on the 5th at 10 p.m. You're still not getting any information about what's inside that file. So, yeah, there's still no content information.
And let's remember one thing regarding recruiters and HR practitioners. What are we looking for as we're sorting through talent pipelines? We're looking to gain the advantage of speed.
Right.
Looking at data and being able to capture it visually very quickly, getting as much data as possible, and then being able to make a decision. Or funnel that to the next level, or improve communications within teams that are reviewing these resumes, or analyzing the talent pools. It's just key. It's just completely key.
I think it's such a great point, and I think maybe this is a good time, though I don't have a slide for it. Megan, you had brought up kind of what is big data, and I think there's a lot of, from the analytics community, before we define talent analytics, big data really is nothing new. There was a book that came out recently called Taming the Big Data Tidal Wave. If anybody actually wants to read about that, it's from a colleague by the name of Bill Franks, who's at Teradata. So he's very well qualified to write the book. It's very readable. It's very English language. So again, Taming the Big Data Tidal Wave. And what he really talks about is that it's not like we haven't had big data. It's just that now there's a lot of hype around it. And as he describes it, the big difference about big data versus the opposite would be small data is really the kinds of math that can be done on it. And you think about all the data that's being collected by organizations today. So some people think it's the size, and yes, there's sheer, social media size and that sort of thing. But it's the kind of math that can be done with it, done on it. And if you think about big data, you mentioned this, Megan, a big output of big data today is that you can visualize it. And so the goal would be, oh my goodness, I found a way to put a visualization on top of social media data. And a great example that's often given is to say, ooh, today people think of my brand positively. Tomorrow I can see it went down. And for historically, it's been more up than down. But you don't typically, at least today, and this may change, you don't typically take big data information and do a lot with it other than to go, my goodness, I've never been able to visualize that before. And so if you think of that being as an output, and if you have, 10 pieces of energy or 10 eggs in the HR basket, if that's the output for HR right now, and you put all of your 10 eggs in the basket of saying, we just want to visualize everything about what our people might be saying or, our employment brand, really what you're talking about today is that the output of that is that you're going to be able to visualize it, but maybe not do a whole lot with it.
Well, and that's compounded by the idea that we've got a conversion, right? We've got a convergence of this idea of big data. We have a very sort of loosely defined huge network called social media in mobile that's happening, and everything's converging into how do we analyze this for talent and business growth? I mean, that's really the question right now. I mean, yep, it's definitely a trend, but it's also like let's solve this visually. I think the closer we can come to solving this visually and saying it's not just for analysts, this is for practitioners as well to really take a careful look at the talent that's coming into a company or that exists within the company. And it's making everyone's job, I think, a whole lot easier once we can gain a collective understanding of these buzzwords, frankly.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. So again, if you're thinking about, as you described, big data today, if the output is we can visualize it, that's still kind of fuzzy, right? And there are some people that are using that, usually in a marketing way versus in an HR way. And so that's one of the things that if you read, we, experienced X% increase or decrease in, XYZ. I have a couple of examples of some HR examples, and they're fairly lightweight, and they tend to be the same ones repeated over and over again. Mostly it's in marketing today, and so, again, you can waste a lot of time on things that you can't control and can't do anything with. And if it were my eggs that I'd be putting in a basket, I would say, actually some people have said from the analytics industry that big data equals small math right now, because really it's more of a visualization versus you talked a little bit about the other huge thing that's happening is just analytics in general, which is I need data that I can give to my analytics people. Maybe they're workforce analytics people, maybe they're your analytics organization that are building performance models to try to predict maybe things like attrition, not only who is going to leave, but why are they leaving. And so you can't really give that big data to fit into a predictive model. And so, you've got to understand that analytics is happening at the same time, and people are saying, really, what else can we look at? What other data sets can we look at to try to predict things? Big data today in an HR scenario really can't help you all that much.
Oh, how refreshing. Thank you, Greta. We needed to hear that, because I just think that there's a lot of hype around the term big data. So you're really helping distill this term that I feel like there's just a disconnect still,
Not only that, but it's also a sense of inadequacy by HR people. Like I talked to many VP HR, and they're looking at it going like, huh, what am I supposed to be doing? I have all this data. I'm visualizing it. I can't make any decisions based on it. What am I missing? And they're listening to all these experts basically saying you must do this, but there's no clear path on what to do it. So we're not saying it's not valuable. We're just not saying the value that it adds today is just, it seems like it's just in visualization. So let's move right along. Tell me more about what it is then. I think we described what big data is and what it gives us today. We talked about workforce analytics and what it is. It's basically the metadata. What's talent analytics then? Tell us more about what are we getting?
Yeah, of this whole, of the whole conversation today, if you want to walk away with maybe one thing is, I want you to walk away remembering these pictures. Talent analytics is literally looking inside the people and in a very standardized way saying, I want to understand the people and display that in a language that business understands. And in a standardized way that is unbiased. And so what we talk about often is that talent analytics is really a direct measure of the people doing the work. Okay, instead of saying, oh, she had this manager and that manager, she's been here 4 times and this was a performance review, therefore what does Greta like? What we do is directly measure by asking a series of questions to the employees in the organization, outputting that into, yes, 11 numbers, but that really allows you to be found in your characteristics and, the strengths that you have inside of an organization so that literally all of a sudden your business can actually, as an example, if they're looking for innovators and that's really their next, big initiative, it would be great for them to know. And this gives HR so much power to be able to say, hey, you're looking for innovators. Let me look into my database and see across the organization where do we have innovators, because you know what, it may not be where you expect them to be, and there's no way that can come to light unless you have a way of systematically and in a standard way measuring people and using numbers to find that. So it's really all about the person themselves, what the people do best and what they yearn for, what they love to do.
We're talking about things like somebody's methodical versus free-flowing, somebody's passionate versus, I don't know what the country is, but basically you're looking at the different characteristics of a person's personality, if you will. That makes
it's a great question, because we really are looking at things that can't be taught. We call them innate, or your instinct, kind of what you're born with. And people tend to be very, what your passions are, what your drivers are, what you are driven to do. And it really ties into engagement as well, because instead of handing me a shiny thing and me saying, oh, great, thanks for the $100, I'll stay, I'll stay now for that month that you told me to stay, but then I'll leave. Imagine having insight then into what really truly makes me engaged, because then you can, there's just so many implications, not only in terms of, what roles might I be suitable for, but what kinds of engagement, would work for me and the like. So yes, we really focus on innate characteristics, and we measure the same thing on everybody across the organization.
So you guys basically way too
Rob and I are chatty today. You go for it, Rob, and then I'll tie in later. What were you going to say?
We don't want to make this an hour and a half presentation today, but I do want to ask one thing though. It seems like this is what the managers do. Good managers do well in organizations, right? They know that for me to motivate John is different than the way that I motivate Mary, right? Like one person might care about money, one person might care about fame and just or personal time. He wants to get the work done faster just because he can go home and spend time with the family. Is that what we're kind of looking for?
I think you definitely have people that are more intuitive, or managers that are more intuitive. The problem that you get into is that managers are people too. And so managers also have 11 numbers, and those 11 numbers are part of their bias. And so even if I'm extremely intuitive, I can't help but believe that you care about the same things I care about. And so they get in the way, and there's no standardized way. And what happens if all of a sudden the manager isn't there? Or there's 2 cross-functional teams working together, or there's a project-oriented thing, and that walks right out the door with the, with the manager. Also, your manager's intuition can't be used in analytical models, can't be used over time. et cetera. So certainly there are things that people will kind of intuitively know, but it's not a standardized approach that, as an example, HR could roll up and say, okay, business people, this is what you say your goals are. Let me tell you finally, and this is what HR has wanted to see, how talent aligns to strategy. And to be able to say, hey, I have a standardized way of taking a look at that, and let me show you the numbers.
That's refreshing to hear again, because I think one of the things we want to understand is not that, okay, this is happening in front of our eyes, but why?
Right.
Why are some groups better, working more effectively than others?
And learn from that. Right.
Right.
And if there's numbers affixed to that, then actually the numbers can be, can be very useful, and you can watch them over time. You can say, call center representatives with these kinds of numbers tended to be more successful in this kind of sale versus, just doing support. So you can back solve from that point and say, well, let's set people up. Let's put Megan in a role then where she's, predicted to be successful versus, let's just beat her, if she's not.
Right. Which is obviously a trend where employees are becoming more empowered and wanting that level of, they want to be heard.
Sure, and they're getting tired of being, told that they're bad at what they do and losing their confidence. And even more than that, I mean, I love employees, and, I am one, and I have employees, but at the end of the day, businesses were formed typically in order to be successful. And what we want to do is be able to deliver data to businesses that say, I can help you, value this asset that you have, because numbers are the language of business. And if they can see, instead of saying, I have an issue with Greta because I don't like her, but if we can really show that she can, her numbers show that she's predicted to perform, maybe not in this role, but these 5 other roles, businesses value that, and it's not so arbitrary then, just, hiring decisions, resourcing people from here to there, that sort of thing. So it really kind of takes that personal, a good percentage of that personal thing out of there, and really delivers data to the businesses so they can make decisions based on results. And then, oh, by the way, yes, the employees are happier versus let's make the employees happy, but then it sends the business down the tubes.
Well, and let's remember, it's not just leaders who want more insight into talent. Employees want more insight into how they're doing and how they're performing, and this then leads to improved internal communication. Once internal communication is improved, then we start talking about external. That's when you start talking about social media and workplace culture and how that translates into what it's really like to work inside. First we need to get that data and get everybody understanding the definition of it and talking about things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm glad you brought up performance as a conversation, because
sure.
There's certainly, and actually I think, Rob, this was your question about aren't some managers really intuitive, and that is one piece. But very often, understanding and really documenting what is performance, let's say, as a call center rep or a manager or a salesperson or an engineer or whatever you can put in there. Can you measure performance? And if you're able to then take the characteristics that talent analytics measures and working with your analytics people, provide them those numbers so they can build performance models and say, oh my goodness, we were literally able to not only just say, hey, I think I see a trend here, but prove it and actually predict that there's a certain set of folks who are going to be more, let's say, as an example, we could predict that this group of people are going to be more effective in a virtual office. This set of folks we can see based on our predictive models are not going to be as effective. I mean, you literally tie it to performance and you set people up to succeed. And so that's the other thing when you just rely on your gut. The data about the people doing the work isn't included in business optimization conversations. And once you get that into a way that it actually can be turned into numbers, you can use it to help make, not make, help make very important business decisions. This is never the only criteria. It's just one of the criteria.
Hey, let's move right along. I have a quick question as we move to the next slide, Greta. I think we have 2 or 3 more slides left before we move on. But how often do you recommend to measure these talent analytics? I mean, people change, right? They have major events in their lives. They get married. They have kids. Their priorities change, or or some other events in their lives. How does that change people's characteristics or talent analytics numbers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. When we formed the company and began working on this, what we wanted to do is to find a way to very efficiently measure characteristics about people that were stable or relatively stable. And so that's really what we've built into here is characteristics that you kind of don't change a whole lot. Like kind of say, you don't, let's say, answer them today as a fish, and then three years later, oh my goodness, you answer it again and you're a cat. So what we wanted to do was really measure these 11 characteristics that were fairly stable. What that allows you to do as an organization is to watch performance over time and to not ask the employer to have to over and over and over again say once a year all 10,000 people need to walk through this, because I know that there's been a lot of feedback and pushback with a lot of systems where, let's say, talent management systems and the like, where people are constantly inputting data. Greta has these new skills. She went to this new training. You're just constantly, having to enter all of this information. And so we kind of have this approach of one and done. You do it one time and you're in for the life of your time at your employer. Are they going to change or very, modestly? Are you going to be slightly, a little bit more, as an example, a little bit more focused on getting ahead one time, or a little less focused on helping other people, maybe. But the trend is definitely continues to be the same. So only one time.
Very good. All right, so tell us more about why big data is less useful today.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's in preparation for this conversation and just over time as well. Rob, you had mentioned something about, there's a lot of HR people, executives saying, we should be doing something with big data because, all the analysts are telling us that we should be. And I agree that, you need to be taking a look at this and every other trend and every other new technology that's coming out there. But I think it's important to read past the hype. And I really urge you to Google HR and big data results. And I think you'll see there was a very nice article done by our friend Josh Burson at Burson and Associates that talks about that HR really needs to be taking a look at big data because it's going to really help them understand the state of their workforce. But it doesn't get into specifics in terms of how you can go about doing that. I would urge that there's probably a direct way for you to stay inside of your company and get feedback from your workforce rather than saying, I need to rely on big data. So if you have to go outside of the walls of your business to understand the state of your workforce, I think that's a little bit of a scary thing. So I'd kind of push back a little bit on Josh Burson on that. Another article that I did find that was quoted often was where they said that HR directors were able to use big data to stay informed of their competitors' global hiring and firing activities. And I think that's interesting, but is that is that really strategic? Do you need to put 9 out of 10 eggs in your big data basket to find that out?
I think we need to start at the basics first.
Exactly.
I completely concur with you.
And so I thought that was helpful, yes, exactly.
Right.
Maybe one egg, not all 10 eggs.
Not all. I mean, let's master the idea of what data visualization can do, what the benefits are, and how that can help the internal organization first. And then you can look at the competition once everyone in the workplace and the team understands, how it's going to benefit hiring processes and HR and talent management functions.
And if one of the global initiatives for your organization in HR is that we have to get on top of our global hiring and fire, of our competitors, then yes, use it for that. But if it's just because it's there, I need to look at it, I don't think so.
Well, again, Greta, this is a lot of what's happened in the buzzword called social media, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we've got to use social media. Well, how are you using it? Are you being strategic? Do you understand how it's going to benefit rather than just saying we've got to do it, let's just do it?
Because everybody else is
Because everybody else is doing it. You know, it's part of that same, along, you know, a certain line, the same argument.
Right. It's very similar, very similar. I thought the next example was interesting, actually. There was a case study out there about Luxottica, I think does eyewear, and they were able to use social media in HR to prove that it was the hiring managers that took too long to make a hire and not the recruiters. So the recruiters actually undertook this big social media venture because they were getting doxxed and people were saying, you're taking too long to hire. And they were somehow able to use big data to come back and say, it wasn't us, it was them. And I was like, is that a really great use of
right.
social media, of big data? I don't know. And so I'd urge you to, I'm sure the stories are out there. They're not easy to find. And I think you'll find the same few stories being circulated over and over and over again that give, you know, HR managers and leaders the sense, like you said with social media, we've got to be using it, but figure out why first, and then go after big data versus just sort of running into the big data morass, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Great points.
So I guess
I gotta step up and jump in here and defend at least my friend Alan from Constellation Research Group, because when I was circulating and tweeting and sharing this on different forums, he was the one who said, don't believe the hype. You know, I'm against all these guys who are basically saying big data is the next big thing because it's not ready. So
right.
These are, you know, not all the analysts are pointing us in the same direction. These are a few that are seeing this for what it is.
Absolutely. So I guess I'd say, you know, don't believe the hype. I'm not saying avoid it, and I'm just saying in HR for right now, it doesn't seem to have been demonstrated, you know, hey, you have to be doing this or you're going to be missing out. You know, not all your eggs in the big data basket. We would actually urge you to maybe take a look at small data, which is what we would call talent analytics, and small data really being inside of your organization.
Can you give us some examples of that, Greta?
Of small data or how people are using it?
Either.
Yeah, let's see if well, a couple of things. Let's do the examples of kind of what we call small data, which I think goes exactly to this slide, and then we do get into some examples. So, you know, if you're not going to waste your time or not all of your time on the big data hype yet, what you might want to focus on instead would be small data, but with a big impact. And the small data that we talk about is the people data. And why we love this as a data set that is readily available to you is, first of all, it's data in your sphere of control. You have no control over the big data that's happening outside of your company walls. And you're sort of, you know, at the mercy of stuff happening out there. You have employees who have managers and, you know, goals and that sort of thing. And so the employees that are right there are really in your sphere of control. And you just say, hey, would you fill this out? Would you answer these questions? And it's an easy thing. And you do that one time and you gather it. So the simplicity factor that it's in your sphere of control is, I think, one reason that it's very compelling.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think the other thing that, you know, we've talked about a little bit is that, you know, people data, people directly contribute to business goals. I mean, that may seem sort of like a no-brainer, but, you know, it's hard to say if I go after this big data set, how is that going to contribute to business goals? I don't know yet, versus people directly contribute to business goals. There is a direct link over and over again that, you know, analytics professionals are showing and predicting and correlating that these kinds of people, you know, are more effective in these kinds of roles. And so you can correlate it directly to the goals of the business. And they're very easy to collect, again, versus, ooh, how do we harness, you know, big data?
And part of this, I think we've touched upon already, is that I think big data just traditionally has been seen as an analyst role to take on. And really, it's everyone's. It's, you know, business is changing. So it's everyone's opportunity to say, how can we utilize this rich data to our strategic advantage and to our benefit? It's not just for one or two people. It's for everybody. There's ways in which we can start slowly adopting and understanding and coming to a better collective strategy around how companies use this, or how individuals use it, or how they understand it.
Exactly, versus just saying HR is in charge of this, why aren't you using it? It is a collective learning right now.
Right.
Definitely so. I think in terms of small data, and we're happy to be called small data because it's inside of your wall, you know, your business. But, you know, you want to make sure it's usable through the entire employee life cycle. It will help you, and you had asked for examples about understanding and reducing attrition. One thing you'll see with we started out with workforce analytics right now. What you can say is that year over year, you know, we've had a 2% increase in attrition or something. But what you're unable to tell right now is why. You know, why is that? Or what can you do to get in front of that so that you can actually reduce it instead of continuing to just, you know, report over and over again about, oh, it went up, it went down, it went up, you know, it went down. And the concern on using big data is that you just gather more and more data to say it went up or down, but you still don't know why until you understand the people themselves and can correlate that to performance.
How are you dealing with some of these privacy considerations? I mean, I know everyone, when we talk about social media, when we talk about big data analytics, it's always that, how are we dealing with privacy? And when you look at it, I mean, everyone's being very open, or many people are, in social media, right, and how they use it and what they share about themselves on Facebook and all, you know, many other channels. I mean, is privacy still a major consideration as we look forward to the evolution of big data?
I think privacy is it's a huge consideration, and I think it's another thing to think about. You know, there was a lot of, if you read about HR and big data, a lot of people say, oh, we're watching big data on social media about our employees, not as a way to snoop, and everybody says, not as a way to snoop, you know, and you're like, okay, you've said that a lot of times, and so what that kind of means is it is a way to snoop. And so I think it is a concern, and will continue to be a huge concern. Which is, I think, what's interesting about small data or talent analytics is that it's always, you know, it's only gathered with people's permission versus, hey, let me go out and sort of, you know, use that. So I don't know, what do you guys think in terms of big data and privacy?
I think we need to remain, I think everyone needs to get educated on the buzzwords and the terms as soon as possible, because what's happening is the data's there. It's in the cloud, it's everywhere. So I just feel like we as either practitioners or leaders or employees need to really understand what's happening in front of us and get educated on the terms first, because this is a giant topic.
Right, the train has left the station.
The train has already left the station, and I feel like there are mass amounts of people who they haven't even wrapped their head around what this all means, and then let alone how to utilize it for themselves as an employee or within the organization or even leaders.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Employees are really worried about what is being collected about me, who has access to that information, how is it being used. You know, am I being manipulated with the data they have? You know, are they asking me to do things based on information they have? I think it's a big fear. I think it has to be addressed. You know, I think leadership in the company plays a big role in that. But also, I think being clear and transparent about information is used. And I think that's why social media and even social within the enterprise has been successful to a certain extent so far, is because people can see, okay, this is my world. This is something that I control. It's not something that HR is using, and that's why I'm more open to jump into those kinds of things than systems that are driven by HR and put in front of me and, hey, you know, do this, otherwise you won't get paid.
And again, I think this speaks to collective communications, external versus internal communications, and having leaders and HR practitioners and employees all be using the same tools and communicating about this. So that, you know, you eliminate that fear factor of like, ooh, you know, is this right or wrong? I mean, have a collective discussion within the workplace. And if you have to start with small data, start with small data. That's okay. At least you're making baby steps.
It makes and I think the other thing too, you bring up a lot of great points. One is that, again, big data is a little out of control right now. And think of the flap that was made. You talk about external or internal data. So customer data and big data very often is in the public, it's out in the ethosphere somewhere, and you can grab it. So think of the flap that was gathered or that happened not too long ago when Target was gathering information about from big data to try to estimate, hey, these people are probably pregnant, let's start targeting them. That wasn't even inside of an organization. That was based on public data, and there was there may even be a lawsuit about using
it just adds to the fear.
Exactly, using external data. Imagine if that isn't, if the use of big data is done on your own employees inside your own wall, okay? And so bringing that data in and not being prepared to actually handle on it, I think, is really scary. When you use small data with a big impact that is very systematized and very standardized, and the bias is taken out and permission is given by the employees, and it's actually used in a very reasonable way with mathematical and statistical rigor, I think it's a much more respectful, and I think it's a much more respectful way to deal with it until really there are some of these things put in control for the suits that employees are going to levy against people using big data to make decisions about hiring or not, or all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's conversations like this that at least get us thinking about what's transforming around us, rather than, okay, we're using this and we're going to just let this unfold. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. We can all join together and get a collective understanding of some of these big data terms and realize there's nothing to be fearful of. These are just buzzwords, and it's so refreshing, Greta, to hear you say, we don't understand this yet.
Right.
It's okay. It's okay.
Not like you're the only one that doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No way. No way.
Mm-hmm. Greta, we're running out of time. This is a very, very rich conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to walking us through all this knowledge. So let's wrap it up. We have a couple more slides to go through.
Absolutely. I think maybe just a couple of points that I think are, as you think about small data or talent analytics, which is analytics on your people, is that one thing, because it's so standardized and so rigorous from a statistical perspective and ties to performance versus just saying, I think I like these people, it does allow HR and businesses to start getting away from just reporting and start forecasting. Things like why, and I mentioned this, why employees are leaving, or why some groups will work effectively, or why top-performing call center representatives are less friendly, or why. So it really can be used for very practical business decisions that, moving away from just reporting history and predicting the future, which is really, I think, where a lot of HR, truthfully, entire organizations are saying, hey, analytics has advanced to the place where we need to be able to start. I saw something today that said, quit being a reporter and start being a prophet. And so I think that's where people are moving, and talent analytics meshes right directly into that. I think just in terms of getting started as well, some folks thinking about, okay, this is interesting, but really, what can I think about? And I think, I want to not just make this a, commercial for, us, Talent Analytics, the company, but thinking about, just in general, how can we use small data to really understand our employees more? And I think the very first thing is get comfortable with people also being numbers. Not only being numbers, but also being numbers, and that those numbers, people immediately jump to saying, oh, isn't that going to mean you're going to fire me? And it's like, hey, imagine being tapped on the shoulder and you're in finance and somebody says, we have a project and we really need creative people, and even though it's not your job, we know you're creative, and we know that because of your numbers. Oh my goodness, how amazing is that? I mean, that is engagement in your role. And so get comfortable with the other side of people also being numbers. Also, I think we owe it to our employees to really understand the people doing the work as a priority before we jump outside of our organization and sort of, kind of run amok with big data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The demand is here clearly for data, right?
Right.
I mean, we
really
see there's a demand, and I think it's going to continue to rise. But I think before it continues to rise in any way that we have an understanding of, that we have to keep talking about, getting back to the basics, right?
I think you make it.
It's only growing.
Yeah,
I think it's just only growing. Yep.
You make a great point that it's not going away. The requirement for data is
right.
People. Exactly. The train has left that station.
Right.
Yep. I think the other thing I would say here is really the third point of, if you use things that can be tied into analytical models, it gets HR out of the role of only being able to be the reporter of bad news. Oh, it took us longer to hire. Oh, attrition is up, but I don't know why. It really allows you to say, we understand the people doing the work, and now we can make comments and we can do things to get in front of that. So I think that's maybe a good point on here. And I've also seen a lot of HR leaders on that very last point is say, oh, let's start, we've been reporting using talent management. Now for my next step, what I want to do is do predictive analytics, and I want to do predictive things right away. And I would urge you to say, let's understand our employees first. Start working with our analytics, professionals to incorporate that as a data set in there. Work your way into predictive versus saying, I'm riding a tricycle and now, I want to be in a circus on, a big fancy bicycle. You really, go a step at a time and sort of, you need to learn to walk before you run. And, and I understand everybody wants to be predictive and forecast everything, but I think it's smart to really learn along the way.
I actually always wanted to be in a circus. I don't know how you came up with that.
Well, I wasn't going to mention it.
That surprised me. Yeah, that's interesting, Rob. I think you'd do very well.
I've seen the clown suit.
Right. And again, this really comes back to the first statement that you made, Greta, about being a person. So,
exactly.
I mean, we have to understand people doing the work as the priority before getting into this whole data concept. I mean, what do people love to do? What's driving people to wake up every day and go to work and take on a certain career? I think once we tackle those issues, we're going to be just a little bit more ready to talk about big data. And again, hey, if we have to talk about small data first, maybe that's a good baby step.
Yep, and I think people will realize that baby step's a lot bigger than,
right.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting because big data, small math, and kind of small outcome right now. Small data, big math, and big outcome right now. So it's kind of backwards a little bit. So kind of just this final slide, who needs big data when you can have talent analytics? And just a couple of things to think about, talent analytics, it's extremely fast to gather this information. It's in your sphere of control, so it's extremely fast. It's very easy. It's actionable. You can look at the information. You can work with your analysts and go, my goodness, we did find a correlation, and that gives us something to do to stay in front of attrition and hiring and that sort of thing. And the biggest thing of all is that it just directly aligns to your business goals, so that when you're talking and you have the seat at the table and you're talking to executives, you can say, this isn't a bunch of hoo-ha that we're running after. I can show you right here over and over and over again how this data aligns directly to our business goals.
Again, refreshing, because I think we all want to know, yes, data is wonderful. How do we use it?
Exactly. And that's typically the biggest question by executives. I think just the final two insights, big data equals big hype for HR right now. I'm saying, maybe a year from now it'll be different, maybe even 6 months, but, things are iterating and things are moving very fast. So I would just say for right now, small data, big insight, and big opportunity, and it's a lot easier to collect and use and align with your business goals.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Greta. This is fantastic. It has been a great conversation. So great that we kept it going for a full hour. We actually, I think this is the first time we do a full hour show. We always keep it to 30, 45 minutes. But it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing all this knowledge with us and really, shedding some light on what is this whole world of big data? Why is everyone talking about it? What does it really mean? And has it been valuable? And I think you really helped us really understand that. So thank you so much for your time, Greta.
Sure. Thank you, Rob and Megan. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, neighbor. Greta and I actually both have offices in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So we're going to be seeing each other, as we say, IRL pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Long overdue. Yes.
Very long overdue.
Well, just a couple of little notes before we go. Thanks again to everybody for participating and for attending. And make sure to visit socialtalentshow.com to see the schedule for what's coming up next, register for the next shows, and to also take a trip down memory lane if you want and see some of our past shows if you didn't attend them. We'd love it if you followed us at Social T Show, and also be sure to monitor the hashtag TChat, because there's always lots of great content there. And finally, if you want to email us at info@upmo.com with any questions about today's show or future shows, we'll be excited to hear from you there. So thanks again so much, everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you, everyone, and tune in today at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're also going to be chatting and talking on TChat on Twitter about internal mobility. That's an exciting topic as well.
We look forward to it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.